cut by the early loggers, and the stumps were left behind. And this one is a classic. This is the stump that you can drive through at Smoky Point up in the rest area in Snohomish County. In the 1950s, this stump was located next to the Pacific Coast Highway. Thousands of Washingtonians drove through the stump, including our family in the 1950s in this old Dodge. I'll always remember it. This stump is significant because it shows us what the timber was like. This truly is one of my favorite places. Here in the beautiful Methow Valley, nestled near the banks of the Chewak River, is the little village of Winthrop. It's an incredible place. In the 1960s, this town was kind of a dead-end location. There was no highway across the Cascade Mountains. The North Cascades Highway didn't exist. But as that road came closer and closer, the people in this town got busy. The owner of the lumber mill and the town leaders got together and they said, let's convert this town and make it a real attraction, a destination. Let's make it an Old West town. And that's exactly what they did. And now people come here from all over the world. You never know what you're going to see in downtown Winthrop. It might be some people on horseback coming down from the hills to enjoy lunch. It might be a group of hay buyers from Asia here to purchase Methow Valley hay. It might be tourists from the southern states. You might even see a Cuban opera singer who works as a busboy every year to make money and take back to his family in Cuba. You never know what you're going to see in Winthrop, but it's worth the trip. Winthrop is one of my favorite places. It wasn't that many years ago that wooden boats were the norm. All up and down Puget Sound and the Columbia River, all across our state, wooden boats were it. They were a lot of work, took a lot of maintenance, took a lot of care, but they were classics. Lots of that history has been lost, but here at the Center for Wooden Boats on the south end of Lake Union, you can come and take a rowboat out, you can take a boat out to sail. It's a touchy-feely place. You can feel the oars, you can go out on Lake Union, you can try it out yourself. You can learn about the history of our Indian canoes, see examples of a wide variety of wooden boats. It's a great learning center. This was the dream of Dick Wagner. Dick lobbied every one of us who were public officials to help establish this location, to teach people. And they're not just here, but they're also located on the west side of Camino Island, as well as on the north shore of Lake Union. This is the Center for Wooden Boats, where you can actually have a boating afternoon and activity for a very low cost and learn a lot. Bring the kids. Center for Wooden Boats, South Shore Lake Union, one of my very favorite places. Here we are in the southernmost reaches of Puget Sound. Native Americans lived on this beach for thousands of years, and there's lots of evidence of that. Broken fire-cracked rock, Olympia oyster shells, clam shells, shell middens. It's all here as evidence today. The first explorers of Puget Sound by the European settlers came in 1792 when Captain George Vancouver anchored his ships on the southern tip of Bainbridge Island and sent young Peter Puget and his crew into the South Sound to explore each bay and inlet. When they got to this spot, they met a number of Native Americans who they said looked very fierce and scary, but in fact were extremely friendly. They named this Friendly Inlet, or Friendly Cove. Later, when the United States, with its young new government, started to do explorations on its own, Captain Wilkes also entered Puget Sound and sent people this far south. They changed the names of these inlets and bays to names that reflected the American influence. This one was called Eld Inlet, and way up in the end of the bay here, it's commonly called Mud Bay. When the treaty times came for the Native American tribes, this became a Squaxin location. The Squaxin are the people of the inlets of South Puget Sound. And they provided a tremendous resource and learning opportunity for all of us on how to sustain the harvest, how to restore the environment, and how to help each one of us know to have better practices in our day-to-day lives to make sure that the salmon always run and that there's always clams and oysters on the beach. On this location, the Squaxin Island tribe, as well as the South Puget Sound Community College, had an archaeology dig for more than 10 years. They discovered amazing things on the beach. Some of it was down on the wet side of the beach, some of it was just above in the cooking locations. They found that there was fish net, that the Indians did have net that they made from cedar bark. They found beautiful baskets. They found many, many cooking tools and even toys that the Native Americans had for their children to play with. The Native Americans would dig clams, they would smoke them, and they'd put them on skewers. And they would carry them on their back all the way to Slilo Falls, or where Bonneville Dam is now located. When they reached there, they would trade for items they couldn't get. They needed hard rock from Eastern Oregon to make projectile tips and to make tools. And so that became a large part of the find here when we did archaeology on this site. Just around the corner from this spot were fish traps. And many Native Americans were involved in the salmon harvest from a wide variety of runs throughout the year. Salmon could be stored and could be preserved and was good for the winter longhouse meals. Native Americans in the summertime, as well as winter, had the opportunity to harvest sea life, clams and oysters and crab and a wide variety of other things that grew in these bays. The tribes here were rich with history and rich with lore, and they still live on these bays and they still harvest the fish. And they're welcome good neighbors to all of us. This is an area that's changed dramatically. Once a very industrial bay with log loading operations and gravel loading operations. And now today its environment is being restored by landowners all around the bay who want to see it be clean and productive in sea life again. There's no question that Elm Inlet is one of my favorite places. Today we're on the shores of the mighty Columbia River near the town of Brewster, Washington. This was the original site of Fort Okanagan, the first American-owned property in what is now Washington State. But many years ago, this was disputed territory between the British and the Americans, and no one was really sure who would end up being the owner. John Jacob Astor was a wealthy financier from New York City, but he knew the fur trade business. He saw the popularity of beaver.
It's crowded up here. Okay. Good morning. Thank you for everyone to be here today to talk about how we propose to protect immigrant workers and strengthen Washington's economy. I want to start off by saying that I really wish we did not have to be here today. I wish we could talk about something else besides people living in a state of terror as they try to live their lives and provide for their families. I wish we were not dealing with an administration hell-bent on meeting a hate-fueled, fabricated deportation quota, rather than keeping our communities safe. But we are not living in normal times. We have a president with no regard for the law, for civil rights, for public safety, or the economic consequences of his actions. So much of what the president does is simply un-American, and that is abundantly clear in his attacks on the immigrant community. This president originally said that he'd focus his immigration enforcement on those who had committed violent crimes. Remember him repeatedly talking about focusing on the worst of the worst. But instead, this administration rounds up hardworking people trying to provide for their families. This is laid out in the facts. This is not up for debate. Almost half of those arrested by ICE in Washington State this year had no criminal record. Zero. These were people helping to keep our economy thriving, contributing to the improvement of our communities, and doing the same things that everyone else in this state does every day. Washington has one of the biggest immigrant communities of any state. Tens of thousands of people in Washington now live in fear, scared to leave their house, to go to work, or to let their children go to school. And that fear is understandable. When you listen to the torrent of racism and hatred spew from the president's mouth, that is a natural reaction in this moment. And you couple that with the immigration tactics that this administration has used, which have been purely draconian. They've hurt employers, workers, and their families, and undermined our community safety. That is why we are advancing the Immigrant Worker Protection Act to propose today to level the playing field for workers. This bill would mean that workers get the same information as their employers when federal officials request an audit of their employment eligibility information. I've made protecting worker rights one of the top issues as Attorney General of this state, and that includes creating a new worker protection unit to enforce our state laws, including the Minimum Wage Act. But when workers live in fear, when workers are scared that ICE will show up at their job at any moment to take anyone that looks like an immigrant, they're less likely to speak out against wage theft or other abuses against the workforce. And I see this bill as a way to level the playing field against that backdrop of intimidation under this administration. One of the things that makes Washington such a great state is that we live in an open and inclusive environment. We value immigrants and the substantial contributions they make for all of us. The determination of everyone who is here with us today will ensure that our state remains a place where workers and business owners can thrive. And I'm proud to stand here today with two lawmakers who are amongst the strongest advocates for worker rights and immigrants in our state. We'll hear first from Rebecca Saldaña, who chairs the State Labor and Commerce Committee and is an active member of the Latino Democratic Caucus. And then we'll hear from Representative Lillian Ortiz-Self, chair of the Washington State Latino Democratic Caucus, and other committees she serves the House Labor and Workplace Standards Committee. We'll also hear from Ana Castro and Jessica Lopez, business owners here in White Center in King County, and then from Danielle Alvarado, the Director of Working Washington, and lastly from Stefan Moritz, Secretary Treasurer of Unite Here Local 8. And then we'll have questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to our Attorney General, Nick Brown, for in these moments when we are having the federal government attacking the very values of Washington, of standing up for justice, inclusion, and making sure that Washington keeps working. He is here to stand up against that and stand up for workers and small employers. My name is Rebecca Saldaña, and I'm the proud state senator of the 37th Legislative District. It is the place where the world calls home. And it is one that I am so grateful to raise my children and to be part of that active community. In the 37th, we have tons of small businesses that are the hope and dreams of immigrants and refugees and small business owners across our communities. And so this bill gives clarity, because it's not just the workers that are afraid, it's the employers that are afraid. It's our restaurant owners and our car dealerships and the auto repair shop. It is about our grocery stores. It is about our schools, where there is a lack of clarity about what are their rights and what are their responsibilities, because their workers are their neighbors. They're their friends. They are the ones that they go to the soccer games with, and they don't know what their rights are as employers. This is about making sure that we keep Washington working, which a decade ago I came here in the legislature because of Trump going into the federal government at that time, and I wanted to make sure, and my kids were afraid. They were afraid that their classmates were going to be sent back to countries they never knew. We had children asking, is there Chuck E. Cheese in Somalia? Because that's where they go when they celebrate their Eid. And I wanted to show them that, bullies and others may be trying to scare us, but that adults here in Washington are going to stand up for their rights, for their kids, for their classmates' parents, and that's why I'm really proud to be able to partner with Attorney General to be making sure that we are providing clarity for our businesses and for our workers about what their rights are. So all we're doing here is saying that if there is an I-9 audit, that not just the employers have notice, but that the workers deserve to have notice too. So this is simple legislation to make sure that we're keeping Washington working. And I am so proud then to be able to introduce and hear from Representative Ortiz-Self, who has been a champion for workers and making sure that we keep Washington working. I'll take this one.
Thank you, Senator Saldaña. And thank you to Attorney General Brown and the community partners who stand with us, some of who are behind us, defending Washington's good values. Today's bill is about something very simple. Every person who contributes to our state deserves dignity, respect, and protection. Washington is a state that believes in fairness, inclusion, and keeping families whole. And this legislation puts those values into action. Immigrants are foundational to who we are. Immigrant workers help build the very communities that we cherish. They pick our food, they care for our families, they build our homes and sustain our small businesses, among many others. Immigrants in Washington also contribute considerably to our economy. Undocumented immigrants paid $96.7 billion in federal, state, and local taxes in 2022. These are our neighbors, our classmates, our co-workers, and our friends, and they deserve safety and stability, not fear and uncertainty. We will not tolerate intimidation or discriminatory enforcement. Recent increases in workplace enforcement actions and I-9 audits are sowing fear, destabilizing families, and undermining community trust. The impacts to our state and national economy are shown by major shortages across industries we all rely on, such as construction and agriculture, hospitality, wholesale trade, transportation, and warehousing. These incidents are part of a broader trend, federal enforcement actions that target and intimidate workers who often have no notice, no ability to gather documentation, and no information about their rights under Washington state law. The result is a powerful chilling effect. People become less willing to speak up about exploitation, which allows bad actors to undercut employers who follow the law. These actions violate the spirit of the Keep Washington Working Act and betray the values that Washington stands for. This bill guarantees transparency and dignity for workers. Workers deserve to know when their workplace is being targeted. This bill ensures clear, timely notice of I-9 audits. No one should be left in the dark about actions that could impact their family's stability. It protects private sensitive information. This bill makes it clear that employers cannot voluntarily hand over workers' records without a subpoena or a warrant. It reflects our commitment to privacy, trust, and basic human dignity. It sets respectful boundaries with federal agencies. Employers, workers, and families deserve to know that Washington will stand up to overbroad enforcement. By requiring proper legal authority for access to non-public areas, we honor our state's values of order, respect, and fairness. The Attorney General will have enforcement authority, and workers will have a private right of action, because rights mean nothing if they can't be enforced. To close, Washington believes in protecting families, honoring work, and standing up for community over cruelty. Let me say that again. We believe in protecting families, honoring work, and standing up for community over cruelty. The Immigrant Workers Protection Act is our commitment to those values. We are saying clearly, in Washington, you matter. Your work matters, your family matters, and your rights will be defended. Thank you. I now have the honor to introduce Ana Castro and Jessica Lopez, business owners in White Center and King County. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brown, and thank you, Lily, and thank you, Rebecca, for supporting small business and supporting all our community. Okay, my name is Ana Castro, and I am a small business owner. I own the Salvadorian Bakery. And as a small business owner, I want my employees to feel safe coming to work. And right now, it's scary times for many people, no matter what their status are. I want to be supportive of my employees and protect their privacy. I will obey all federal law, but my employees deserve to know when their privacy the information is being shared. These laws give businesses owners guidance and answers about what to do when the federal immigration enforcement come to their businesses. And I also want to add that as a small business, and I'm very proud that we have lawmakers like them supporting our community. And the small businesses right now are suffering because we don't have enough customers, because a lot of people, it doesn't matter if they have their legal status, they're scared to go out because they are afraid to be snatched from the ICE and law enforcement. And also, I want to mention one thing, that we small businesses pay a lot of taxes, and I'm very, I am very unhappy the way the taxes are used to pay this immigration ICE from our small business taxes. And it's a shame that they use the taxes from our community to pay these people to be bullying us in our communities. Thank you.
¿Me recuerdas que tengo que comprar pasteles para el domingo?
Okay, yes, gracias.
My name is Jessica Lopez. I own a Oaxaca grocery store and gift shop in White Center, and I also co-founded and co-chair the White Center Business Alliance, and they're both based in White Center, a neighborhood in Seattle. I am here in support of this act. This act represents clear guidelines for my business in case of an I-9 audit. In the event that my business were to get audited, these guidelines would give me clear steps on what I can do in order to protect the privacy of my employees and to protect my business. This act also gives me peace of mind. My employees have become more than employees. We work side by side almost every day. They have become my friends, and in some cases, they have become like family. I am glad to know that these guidelines exist so that I can take the right steps to follow the law and to also do what's best for my business and for my staff. This will also be a good resource for small business owners like myself. Many small businesses like mine have asked for similar guidelines on what to do in case of an I-9 audit, and I'm glad to have this standardized resource to point them in that direction in case they need it. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Danielle Alvarado. I'm proud to be the Executive Director of Working Washington. For more than a decade, we have organized workers to fight for better working conditions, higher wages, and the rights to enforce those wins. We know the work does not end with passing new rights, so we have a legal team dedicated to ensuring that workers have the support they need when they come forward to report labor standards violations. We led the Fight for 15, where workers stood up to large corporate interests and made the impossible not only possible, but common sense. What we did in Washington inspired change across the country. We have the opportunity to do the same today. We are proud to be here in partnership with Attorney General Brown to commit to doing everything we can to make sure the Immigrant Worker Protection Act passes this year. Our state is staring down a federal administration focused on demonizing immigrant workers and families, while it weakens our economy and the labor rights infrastructure we have relied on for decades to improve the lives of working families across our state and the nation. Every day we talk to immigrant workers who are increasingly afraid to speak up when their wages are stolen, when they are discriminated against, or when they are told they will be written up if they use the sick time they have earned. Threatening workers with deportation is not a new tactic, but it is a powerful one. And it doesn't just harm immigrants, it undermines our entire workforce and good employers. We tell those workers they have the exact same rights as everybody else, and that we will stand with them to make sure those rights are protected. And we are proud that in this state, we can tell them that our leaders stand with them too. That's what this bill is about. It's an important step forward to protect immigrant workers and give them another tool to make sure that they don't have to endure unsafe working conditions, predatory federal law enforcement, or low-road employers. By requiring advance notice, the same notice that employers get, workers will have meaningful opportunity to maintain stability for themselves and their families. Communities across Washington will benefit, and it will reduce barriers to workers coming forward to enforce other critical workplace protections. Thank you, Attorney General Brown, Senator Saldaña, Representative Ortiz-Self, for your leadership at a time that demands courage from all of us. The power of this proposal right now is not just that it strengthens protections for immigrant workers. It also reflects our commitment as a state to be proactive, to be pro-worker, pro-immigrant, and to continue to innovate, even while we do the important work of defending ourselves from regressive federal attacks. This bill sends the message workers need to hear right now. In Washington, we will continue to build an economy that uplifts working families, and we will continue to enforce the right to a good and safe workplace for every worker in our state, no exceptions. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Stefan Moritz, Secretary-Treasurer of Unite Here Local 8.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stefan Moritz. I'm the Secretary-Treasurer of the Hospitality Workers Union Unite Here Local 8, and I also serve as the Vice President of MLK Labor, which is the Central Labor Council in King County. My union, Unite Here, represents 7,000 members in Washington and Oregon, hospitality workers from all walks of life, and folks in our union work in restaurants, in hotels, in airport food service, in stadiums, in cafeterias, corporate, university, even public schools. We represent thousands of immigrants who make our workplaces, our union, and our community the vibrant places that we love and call home. That's why we stand alongside many others in the union movement, the immigrant rights movement, and the vast majority of people who believe in human rights, in the dignity of all people, and in basic fairness in pushing back against the anti-immigrant policies of the federal government. Us and the labor community broadly supports the Immigrant Worker Protection Act, and we support A.G. Brown, Senator Saldaña, and Representative Ortiz-Self as they propose this important piece of legislation. We fought to have provisions like these in many of our collective bargaining agreements in our union contracts. We know employers can comply with those provisions because we already have those protections for our members, and they work every day, and they've helped many people protect their rights. Our union contracts, for example, require that employers notify the union within 24 hours of a search and/or arrest warrant, an administrative warrant, or a subpoena from the Department of Homeland Security. If an employer has advanced knowledge that federal immigration will be doing an I-9 audit, workers should have that notice too, so they can seek their own legal advice, their own support with their community on how to respond to the situation. If an employer turns over or grants the federal government access to personal information, workers have a right to know about it so they can take steps to protect their rights. This bill would guarantee these protections for workers that did not get to negotiate them in their union contracts, or workers who don't have a union. We think all workers, all people in Washington should have those rights, and we look forward to working with the legislature, with Attorney General Brown, to pass this legislation, and we look forward to the governor signing it. And I think I'm turning it back over.
Let me just thank again our sponsors of this bill. I really appreciate your leadership in this space, and all of our stakeholder partners, but most importantly, all of the workers who are here today and the organizations that they represent. I want to thank all of them for being here, and with that, happy to take any questions.
Attorney General, I have a question about how frequently these I-9 audits occur. Can you give some context?
Well, it sort of ebbs and given the season and the administration, but we've certainly seen a pretty significant uptick in many parts of Washington state, and we've seen the ramifications of that. Businesses disrupted, workers not coming to work, being very fearful, people being separated from their families at various stages. So I don't have the data, the numbers. We can certainly follow up, but we've seen a significant increase.
Any sense of the fiscal impact of this, and if that challenges the bill at all?
Of the bill? Yeah. It shouldn't be much. I mean, there are requirements now for our agency to provide some guidance. There are requirements now on employers to comply with the bill, but the fiscal ramifications of the bill itself are pretty minimal. Anyone else? The questions online?
Yeah, we've got a question on Zoom.
Modern technology.
Hello, Agent Brown. My question is, if this bill is passed, how does it protect employers, especially when it comes to possibly being charged for informing employees of the paperwork, like, impeding the investigation?
Well, there are penalties associated with failure to follow the law, which is pretty similar to many laws in Washington State. If you don't follow worker protection issues, there can be consequences of that. So that's how I view the impact on employers. But I also think it's important to note that we view this bill as a bill that also protects employers, that is good for businesses, that strengthens their opportunity to partner with their workforce. We've seen so many businesses, not only in this year, but in years past, disrupted by really aggressive I-9 audits at their workplaces. So we want to make sure that businesses benefit from this bill as well.
We've got one more on the.
Hi, Donna Sowerby from the Seattle Times. I just want to see if you could talk a little bit more about elaborate a little bit more on how enforcement would work and how funding for this would also work.
Well, the bill gives my office, the Attorney General's office, the authority to respond to violations of the law. And that is work that we broadly do across many different industries currently through our L&I division, through our civil rights division. We enforce Washington state laws that now exist to make sure that that employers are treating their workforce fairly. And so, we, on a regular basis, investigate allegations of civil rights violations in the workplace, labor standard violations of the workplace, and so that is active and ongoing work, and this just expands the type of work that we will be involved in. We're not asking for additional legislative funding to help us support that work, but we are confident that given the scope of the work that we think is before us, that we will be able to continue to do that. Okay, with that, thank you again to everyone here, and let's go pass the bill. Appreciate it.